Previously on the Game On podcast.
After, I think it was 6 or so games into the season, him and his brother George, his younger brother George, go into Port Adelaide, and there's a box there where you can enlist for the AIF.
Yep.
So the pair of them go up to the window and tell the bloke they want to enlist. So, yeah, no worries, come through, boys. So they enlist. Dad's no problem, but his brother George is underage.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
And so Dad tells the bloke that, George is old enough. So they take George on his brother's word that he's old enough to be in the AIF. And they both join, go back home, tell their parents that they've joined. No correspondence with their parents about joining. Wow. The pair of them just did it off the bat. Go back home and they tell their parents that they're both enlisted in the AIF, and before you know it, they're both shipped off to the Middle East, and they don't keep him in the same battalion. Georgie goes to a different battalion. Dad goes into the 2nd 43rd, and George gets killed, doesn't come home, and my father had to live with that for his whole life. That he lied is a very strong word, but he told the bloke there that his brother was old enough, and he wasn't, and Dad had to live with that. And it's a part of my. I get asked a lot about this, and I lose it every time, and I'm on the verge of losing it now. But it's a part of my dad had to live with that all his life, and I'm positive, boys, that it was part of his motivation, and just to lose his brother. And they said that, like, out of the young one fell out of the tree and was killed with his gangrene, but there were 4 boys left. And the story that goes back is that George, the one that enlisted with Dad, was the better out of all of them on the football field. That's just the story that we get from people around Exeter, and we've done a little bit of homework. They said he was a brilliant footballer. And he must have been good to be better than Tom and my dad.
Yeah,
so they reckon that he only played 9 games for the Magpies, but they said that he was a terrific footballer. And Dad, quietly and methodically as he was, very quiet person, my father, had to live with that unfortunate thing, and so he gets shipped off, and away they go, and Georgie gets nailed, and Dad continues on with his career in the armed forces in the Middle East.
Just incredible. Now, mate, no secret here. I want to read this out, Greg.
Yep.
Warrant Officer Quinn was ordered to take command of the 10th Platoon and blow up a barbed wire barrier and attack an enemy post from which a machine gun was inflicting heavy casualties. To blow up the barbed wire, they had to jump out of a trench and lay a Bangalore torpedo, an explosive charge placed on the end of a long extendable tube. And an unrelenting haul of fire, Quinn looked at his men in the trench and told them they were probably facing death, and he would lay the last pipe, the most difficult of all, because it was the closest to the machine gun. One by one, Quinn ordered his men to jump from the trench and place a pipe under the wire. Only 3 of the 7 came back. It was then Quinn's turn. He was hit by shrapnel, which put a hole in the top of his right thigh, but he still put the last pipe down, which ultimately made this crucial mission successful. On his way back to the trench, Quinn picked up a wounded mate, was hit again, this time in the face, prompting another to say, "Hell, Bob, half your face is blown away." Quinn responded, "Any change would be an improvement." Now that's... Jesus, Quinny, that's explosive. That's hitting.
Yeah, and that's the Aussie larrikin that we love.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome back to Game On.
Welcome back you, Pete.
Thank you very much. It's been a long couple of weeks, and I think it was poignant that we played that little excerpt from the Bob Quinn interview from a few weeks ago that, you know, it just transcends football in every simpler way. And I think the Aussie larrikin, as he mentioned right at the end there, is pretty much all the spirit that a lot of the Anzacs have been held in for a long, long time.
It's just extremely powerful. Reading that out was, and then hearing Quinny again, it's, look, Weathers with Barley, and I think Greg with the war, and that's probably
couple of big episodes there. So, no, we thank Greg for his time and obviously opening up on, you know, very sensitive subject and sharing that with us and also our listeners as well. All right, mate, let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, mate, today we've got a bit to catch up on for the last couple of weeks, so we might chop and change a little bit from 2 weeks ago and last week, but we'll work through it anyway. But let's start off with a couple of weeks ago, some surprise results in round 10 with the Suns defeating Geelong by 64 points up in Darwin.
Yeah, it just showed that night, the sweaty ball and GWS's ball movement was fantastic that night. But they've got to do it in Melbourne. That's still the big question on Gold Coast are improving, but they've got to take, last week was a chance. They were 5 points down late in the third quarter against Carlton and fell away. But they've just got to get a couple of wins away. It's been a little bit like Adelaide from last year. Powerful at home, but pathetic away.
Sydney getting the job done, obviously, against Carlton, which we sort of expected at the SCG there. Collingwood and Adelaide was an interesting one for me. Sitting back in hospital watching this game, it sort of ebbed and flowed a little bit. Adelaide missed some opportunities, but again, the umpiring decision of Rankin running too far, we know that in the cold heart of day, he did run too far. But what are your thoughts, mate?
I had no problem at all with that decision personally. I think the carry on. And ironically, Adelaide actually got a couple other free kicks in that last 5 minutes. There was one which I still don't know what it was for. I've watched it 3 times and and I'm a maggot. I can't work it out. So, that one. Don't have a go at the umpire on that. Have a go at Rankin that he bounced the ball too quickly in the first place. My pet hate of not running 15 metres and then bouncing it. If he'd done that, he would have been fine.
Yep.
And the carry on about it, hang on, there was 20-odd seconds to go. Crows player hadn't marked the ball. So
anything could have happened. GWS obviously getting beaten by the Bulldogs was a little bit of a surprise. This is why I wanted to start off with round 10 because it was a bit of an abnormality of a few different results.
Ebbed and flowed a bit. Look, I think really at the moment you've probably only got it's really North Melbourne and Richmond with all their injuries and North Melbourne, and then everyone else can really beat each other on the day. Gold Coast, especially West Coast at home, not so much away, but so it should be an even competition and so hard to pick. With the draft, etc.
We'll get to that a little bit later, but obviously Freo knocking over St Kilda, definitely understandable there. And probably the other big one was Hawthorn taking Port Adelaide right to the line.
And they should have won. They only themselves to blame. They went way too defensive. Instead of at three-quarter time, if we kick 1 goal or 2 goals, we've won the game.
Yep.
And it was just a classic grab defeat from the jaws of victory by not attacking enough. And they effectively let Port, and Port had a lot of luck in that last couple of minutes, but they let Port back in the game by not trying to win the game.
Yep.
They got what they deserved.
Interesting. And West Coast surprise packet beating Melbourne over in Perth there. What do we make of West Coast at the moment? We're going to talk, obviously, about the last round and them getting belted by Adelaide by 99 points, but is it a case of that they've got their mojo a little bit while the home crowd's behind them, but when they get on the road, they're not sure?
Maybe, a little bit. I think, too, Harley Reid, where he's burned off Petrarca, that's a pretty fair effort.
Well, he didn't only do Petrarca, he did Oliver at the same time.
Yeah, I think you get the 50-odd thousand supporters and all aboard, probably the umpiring aboard, as we know as well.
Yep.
It is a big thing. And then last week here, with the Crows West Coast game, Crows started so well. 7 goals up within 20 minutes.
Effectively, the game's over. What are your thoughts? And I was going to leave this until we talked about the Adelaide and West Coast game this week. But what are your thoughts on Harley Reid? I mean, he's a missed opportunity for North Melbourne, isn't he?
Oh, unbelievable! Do we remember at North Melbourne who they even beat? Whatever. No. What do we remember? They missed out on Harley Reid.
Yep. All right, let's move on to last week's rounds. We'll talk specifically this time about Port Adelaide and Adelaide. Adelaide, as we've just talked about there, a little bit of an easy kill with West Coast 7 goals up. What were some of your positives from that game there? Because, they did have the game on their terms, but you have to look at some of the positives too.
Scholl, that's probably his best game for the year. Soligo, good. And the fact they were so far in front, they could actually manage his minutes.
Yep.
Getting on top around the ball. So there were plenty of positive. So many goal kickers is probably the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
So plenty of things there, but just hard to really assess.
Based upon your opposition.
Yeah.
I thought it was good that they were trying to execute through the middle of the ground. Yeah. It looked like Crouch and Dawson were doing, what they needed to do. But also Dawson's midfield minutes have seemed to have gone down a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and he's playing a little bit more forward. So I think that's also a positive for them, that he's looking to add that to his bow to his game.
Well, he can take a fair catch above his head, take a fair grab. So, assess it around. Probably they're going to have to mix and match a bit with another cut with Rankin out for another 2 or 3 as well.
Yep. Last one on Adelaide before we move on to Port Adelaide. Have Adelaide, their new coaching philosophy for 2024, has that philosophy cost them at the moment?
I still just don't get from Adelaide why Nathan Bassett wasn't at the very, very least interviewed. That still has me completely stuffed. Yeah,
So they lost Riley. Yeah. I'm not sure the exact Riley. That's the one. With a little bit of tactics. It seemed like over the pre-season they went very defensive to try and plug some of the holes that they'd sort of been letting go over the last couple of years. But in the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've almost reverted back to what they were doing in 2023, which was let them go. Let them actually, play football rather than restrict them.
Well, they probably didn't even in round 1 in terms of they did let him go and came back from 5 and very nearly pinched it in the last couple of minutes. Such a fine line. Like, if Rochelle kicks the goal, they beat Collingwood. Dawson kicks the goal against Brisbane, and he should have kicked that. They win that game instead of the draw.
Yes, the holding the ball for Essendon.
And that some errors there where they got two. They were 2 goals up 2 minutes before 3/4 time and made an error, and it was even at 3/4 time. So.
But their football up until this point, the last 4 or 5 weeks, the football up until that point there was very stagnant, defensive, not looking to take the game on. Now, has some of that, and this is a bit of a question we notice, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is it a case of that they have mixed things up and a couple of magnet changes on the coaches board has actually allowed that to happen with a Rankin going into the middle
and Soligo having more midfield time
and Dawson heading into the forward line a little bit?
Well, they're probably just having those two. It meant the ball movement's quickened up. It's not so stagnant, which is where St Kilda have fallen right away because their ball movement, if it was any slower, they'd lose a game against a snail.
Well, it's not looking good for them at the moment, that's for sure. We'll stick with Adelaide for a little bit longer. We were going to move on, but I want to cover some of these want to cover some of these conversation starters because it has been a couple of weeks. But who are realistic results for the Crows in 2025 as far as recruits go? Have they backed themselves into a corner by saying that they're going to go after all of these high-profile recruits?
Possibly. I still think Adelaide, hang on, 2017, they still haven't effectively replaced Sauce Jacobs in the ruck. 7 years later, it's still their biggest weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that Strawn's been on the list 4 years.
And we've only seen him half a dozen times.
He's played 2 games.
Yep.
Bizarre for mine. I just don't get that. Murphy coming straight back in. That's my bit. My gripe with Adelaide is they worship mediocrity. Yay, good try. I want them to have a crack trying to win a flag, not just be competitive. That's my big beef.
We are going to talk about Hawthorn in a minute being a bit of a blue-collar side. Do you see Adelaide being in that same boat, in that they are trying to be a bit too blue-collar?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think Will Day coming back in for Hawthorn's brought that big touch of class and changed them up. It's a massive game this week, those two. I still think Hawthorn should have beaten Port. Well, they did beat Port, managed to lose it themselves.
Yes.
So they're in pretty reasonable form.
And their last 4 or 5 weeks have been actually
good.
Pretty good.
Been very good.
Staying with Adelaide again, Matthias Filippo, Elliot Yeo, Harrison Petty, Will Haywood and Harry Perriman. How do they get any of these through the door?
I just think it's still a little bit early. There'll be things happening behind the scenes, trying to check out who's realistically available, not pie-in-the-sky stuff. I don't think Elliot, there's still big risk about his body.
Well, he's only played, 40 or 50 games in the last 5 years.
Yeah. And Harrison Petty as well, there's question marks there. Look, I just think Matthias Philippo's just got the second-year blues.
Mm-hmm.
I got no doubt he'll still be a very good player.
Yep.
I'd love to get him personally.
If you get him into that midfield there or into the midfield mix there, I think Adelaide starts to look a lot better as far as options go. Plan B, Plan C, Plan D.
I think he's a good kid. I've actually got a bit angry the last couple of days with people saying, he's arrogant. He's not. I got a lot of time for Matthias the kid, my dealings with him, and it's been a few. I rate him really highly as a kid. Good manners, kid, actually listens. I just think he's got second-year blues. He's not the first player, won't be the last player.
Yep.
I still think he'll be a very good AFL player.
Yep.
And I still think it'll be with St Kilda.
Okay. There you go. I only put it on the agenda because, he's obviously not getting a game at the moment and Ross's style may not suit him, if that also plays into a fact as well.
That's a possibility that Ross Lyon's style wears away at you. And at the moment, they look like a few of the players are fed up with playing so defensive.
And safe all the time.
Yeah, yep. So...
Yeah. But he may be a candidate to let off the leash.
Yeah.
And if
massively.
they did, he might repay them in spades. But if they don't, and he hasn't signed a contract yet, well, then if I'm Adelaide, I'm going for him 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
And age profile as well. That's the other thing you've got to look at as far as what Adelaide are doing as well. Burgess into the ruck was a bit of a surprise. Where does that fit with Himmelberg and Thilthorpe set to return at some stage?
I still think Burgess is a stopgap. I think... Him and Himmelberg's probably a fair, and all that. I think Thilthorpe's
the one. Yep.
Yeah, a fair bit above.
And he's gone back to the track this week for the first time, which is good.
Bit. Yeah, so maybe, but he's still probably at least 4 to 6 away, so, yeah.
And then you got probably another week or two just to get himself completely right. They don't want to take any risks for him.
No, he'd have to play at least a couple in the SANFL.
Question without notice again. Let's just say hypothetically Tex Walker at the end of the season says, look, I can't go any further.
Yep.
He's not playing that way. He looks like he's got a one or two more years left in him. But as we've seen, the game can go past you very, very quickly.
Yep.
Let's just say hypothetically Walker says, look, I'm done. Can't go another year. Thilthorpe sort of takes Walker's spot. Where does that leave Himmelberg and Burgess in the future?
It depends whether they still want to go with 2 or 3 and whether Fogarty's becomes more the floater and whether they can get his fitness level to that extent. I think there's always been question marks on his fitness because there's always been the thought that he'd go through and maybe have some midfield minutes, and that's never happened.
Yes.
So I think there's still a lot of question marks on the Adelaide forward line.
So with Adelaide, you often compare, a bit like every other team, you compare your premiership years and stuff like. Do we see Thilthorpe being a little bit more like a Robben, where he's that roving,
possibly
centre half forward connector?
I think he's a very important player, but yeah, I think he's connector, and then you can use him those extra midfield minutes.
Yeah.
In ruck, but they've got to get
just that little bit more class around the ball, but also back
and
on
a ruckman.
And a ruckman. Adelaide, can they break the MCG hoodoo after losing their last 9 games, but the last 3 have been by 4 points, 4 points and 2 points. So they don't mind playing there. They just can't get over the line.
Yeah, I think Hawthorn have got to start favourites on their form, and I'd be tipping Hawthorn, but yeah, I think it's a 50-50 game.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Port Adelaide. Another easy kill for Port Adelaide against the Kangaroos, obviously winning there by 59 points. My big concern was that Rosie's injured again when they didn't really need to take a risk with him, did they?
No, I would have thought you would have gone North Melbourne. We can rest him for one more. I can imagine I'm right, but it turns out another, and he has been ruled out of tomorrow night.
Yep.
So you as a Carlton supporter should be quite happy with
that,
am
mate. Absolutely cock a hoop. I'm actually thinking Carlton are going to start favourites.
Yeah, I still fancy Port. I think it's going to be a wet weather game, and let's face it, we haven't had one of those. So who knows?
Well, the only teams that have played in those conditions are not GWS, Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, so let's just wait and see. So it's going to be different. See, thing called rain. Apparently, it comes out of the sky and it gets you wet.
They're saying that we might be getting a few meals over the next 2 days, and then it's going to be perfectly nice again. So we'll see how it goes. All right, let's stick with Port Adelaide as well. Ken Hinkley now has a bit of a honour that he doesn't really want next to his name, being the highest number of games coached without a grand final appearance.
It's not a great record, but it's not one you want to have. So, look, I still think there is chance. There are a chance this year. It's very even. Teams are falling away. Look, at the moment it looks Sydney and then one other. And if Sydney end up finishing minor premiers and they get 2 finals in Sydney,
you've got to back them, don't you?
Yeah, you have to.
Have they peaked a little bit too early though, Sydney?
It's too early. I agree. At the moment, it's got to wait and see. And they've got very few injuries. They get a few injuries, and that changes Sydney up. So I think it's anyone's title.
I've got some questions on our hot topics on that one there, and we'll circle back to that one. We'll stick with Port Adelaide for the moment. Have Port Adelaide backed themselves into a corner with a handshake agreement with Josh Carr, considering Buckley is considering a return to coaching?
Yeah, possibly.
I mean,
just wait and see.
I know that he's playing coy with the whole Tasmania deal and bits and pieces like that, but you'd think Port Adelaide would have been going after him at 1,000,000 miles an hour if that he was available.
Yeah.
Tried and true coach versus when I say a new coach, I'm talking about a first-time AFL coach. But he's been a very successful coach at North Adelaide. He's been a very successful coach over in Freo, and he seems to be doing the right things at Port Adelaide. So I think the progressions are there.
Yeah.
But have they backed themselves into a corner?
Possibly.
Potentially.
Possibly. I've still got nightmares from 18. You didn't have to bring that up, mate.
No, sorry. My physio today, he's a mad North Adelaide supporter, and he rubbed it in a little bit, but then I was able to give him one back for 22. Yeah. So, we called it a 1-1 draw in the end, and he didn't hurt me any further on the massage table. We'll stay with Port Adelaide. Where is Port Adelaide's SANFL team at the moment, sitting bottom without a win? Is this a statement to the SANFL and taking the P1155 or the piss out of the SANFL?
Look, they're a young squad. They probably overall, if you look at their age profile, they do actually lack a few 25, 26, 27-year-olds. And
so they've got that top end and they've got this bottom end, but nothing in between.
I think if they get a few injuries, it could make it interesting there. Look, they have been disappointing to not even have a contest against South Adelaide.
Well, this is why I bring it up.
It's pretty disappointing. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. All right, we'll stick with Port Adelaide as well. We've talked about Todd Marshall in previous episodes in him taking that number 1 mantle, but he looked so much better without Charlie Dixon being there.
It'll be interesting what Port do tomorrow night. We'll actually know in another few minutes on their side, another 15 minutes.
Yep.
Very nervous on the mid-season draft. We'll talk about that.
We will. That's coming up.
So we just got to wait to see. Again, wet. And depending how wet it is.
Well, I wouldn't be playing Dixon if it's wet.
Yeah, no.
Me personally.
I agree. So it'll be interesting what they do.
I'd be putting a narcle or some of those ball crummers around the ball. Willie Rioli is a huge loss for them, I believe, as well. So very, very interesting. Do Port Adelaide have to beat Carlton to be considered a genuine premiership threat? I know it's early in the season, but they've struggled against top 8 teams. This is their big Achilles heel.
The question mark on Port is still that. I still think it's a bit early just to grab. Hey, look, let's remember Western Bulldogs in 16. If they hadn't, that introducing that week off before the finals actually gave them a chance. You hit form in that last 4 weeks. I think it's still too early yet.
Yep. All right, let's move on to some of the AFL hot topics. The big one that's come out this week is the umpiring, with holding the ball being the big one. The week before was obviously the distance the ball has either travelled to be a mark and also the running before a bounce or after a bounce, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The umpires have been in the firing line the last couple of weeks, but this holding the ball one seems to be the biggest one that frustrates every supporter and every player, it seems like, in the AFL.
Now, let's just see, though, if they panic and go way too hard and all of a sudden it's 8 million holding the balls being paid. So it's going to be interesting. The big thing we've all said, because they've been letting it go so long, it does increase the chance of the tackle and the sling tackle because they've let it go too long. So that way I think it's good to see. But for mine, I just want to see what happens this week.
You see what's going to happen on Thursday night. Yeah. They're going to go massively hard on it. Then they'll correct it for the Friday night. And then by the rest of the weekend, it'll be a mixed bag of both. So
I think if that's fair call.
It's going to be an interesting one to watch. And it's very unusual that the AFL are making changes mid-season with a lot of these things as well. And I know it's an interpretation issue. It's not a rule or a law change or a rule change as such, but it's an interpretation change. But
I think very unusual. I think it's because there have been so many showing that, hang on, the guy's been spun and he's done a 360. Well, that's holding the ball. So maybe a little bit more common sense, but I'm just worried that if the ball getter is going to get pinged ruthlessly, I hate that. I'd much rather.
You should always.
I've got a in the back and over the shoulder is still in the laws of the game, and yet they very rarely get paid.
Is that a chance to keep the ball moving though?
I just think you should be protecting the guy getting the ball far more. Yep. That's my own thoughts.
So the guy who's actually hunting the ball is now going to be penalised a lot heavier.
That's the way it reads at the moment. So let's just wait and see, but that's my worry.
I've watched some of the film back from the late 80s, late 80s, mid-80s, late 80s, SANFL, VFL, the waffle, et cetera, et cetera. The umpiring was very quick on the holding the ball decision, and that actually helped move the ball quicker.
Yeah.
So could this be a little bit of a byproduct?
I agree with that, but there were more in the backs and over the shoulder played then as well.
Agreed. But let's get one part right and then let's move on to the next. Maybe we should put in a call to AFL House, Laura Keane there, and see if we can get her on the podcast, but also put some suggestions forward. I don't think that's going to work.
I don't think she'd take my call, just quietly.
Fair go. All right, let's stick with some of the AFL hot topics. Is it hard to pick a team this year with more teams going through patches of form? We did talk about it briefly. I think Geelong was 7-0.
Yeah.
Sydney are now top of the table, 2 games clear. Are we going to see teams that do get little runs on?
I think so. And I think with Geelong, they've probably midfield's been worked out and Dangerfield out has just been vital for them. So, I think injuries, probably the one side who's done very well, considering how many injuries they've got, has been Collingwood.
Yes, well, Collingwood today, a couple more injuries have come up.
Yeah.
Not looking good for them. So, they're in a precarious position. And I did save this topic. I was going to talk about it next week, but I'll talk about it now, in that both grand finalists, once again, are going to struggle to make the 8. Or maybe just make the 8.
Yeah, I don't think Brisbane will make it now. Collingwood's still a chance. Huge game Friday night. Massive game.
Yep. We'll get to that one in a minute. Let's stick with some of the hot topics. The AFL House taking their time answering questions, replying to clubs. Is this a problem? Because this is a national competition. These guys should be on call 24/7. And from what I'm hearing, they basically shut down from Friday afternoon onwards and don't do anything until Monday morning. Which is
ridiculous. It's a multi-million-dollar business. It's not a pie shop, and we run out of your mum's apricot slice. Can you make some ready for Monday? For goodness' sake, yeah.
You got players who are getting reported on a Thursday night, having to wait till Tuesday for an answer.
Yeah.
I think unbelievable that it's taking this long in such a professional sport.
Well, in that way, it's unprofessional.
Well, correct. Yeah. Luke Parker, 6-game suspension was upheld. What are your thoughts on that bump? It's not.
I thought he was a little unlucky to get 6. I thought 4 or 5, but it still was poor. There was no awareness by him whatsoever, and it was unnecessary.
Yep.
So it was done by Luke. Their argument, and I heard Tom Harley spoke very well on SEN about it, that hang on, it was nowhere near as bad as Webster. Now, and so therefore it should have only got 5, not 7. And I agree with that, but I thought Webster got off lightly. It was 7, I've always said that. So 6, maybe a little unlucky, but I don't think it's a terrible decision, personally.
Fair call. All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break.
No, let's go on this next one.
Well, hang on.
I'm pumped on this one.
All right, well, let's save this one for after the break. We're going to take a very, very quick break. We've got to acknowledge a sponsor. We've already gone 30 minutes, so we're going to go a fair way in this episode, so we better squeeze this one in.
Are dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
All right, let's get back to Around the Grounds. Thank you to Roger Steen Crash Repairs for supporting us. And Craig, head on down there if you need any work done to your car. All right, let's move on to the red hot topic that you are up and about, ready and raring to go, mate, the time wasting.
There are 2 aspects of this. One, it was pedantic and disgraceful umpiring by Nichols. It was, look at me, I'm the number one thing. It was terrible umpiring. But the second point, why in this again, we're back on the so-called professional game. They are full-time people not knowing the laws of the game. Now, Craig McRae said, I'd never heard of that before. Well, it's been there. It's in the laws of the game.
Yeah, but he's also been an exponent of eating minutes.
Yeah,
that's probably the best way of putting it, is
that
they work out ways to eat minutes so they can get set up around the ground behind the ball, et cetera, et cetera.
I've got no problem with that, but it wasn't a case of wasting time. The umpire didn't have to do that on that. So if he'd thrown that to a player 15 yards away, bloody oath, pay the free. I just don't think there was any need. But know the laws of the game. Don't give someone who is pedantic like Nichols in his personality, don't give him a chance. If you knew the laws of the game, and Dacos knew it was a free kick straight away.
Yep, and he wasn't going to argue because it was going to cost him 50 anyway. Yeah. Do you think it was a little bit of a square up for the Steele side bottom one a couple of minutes earlier where he called for it and he just left it on the ground and walked away?
Well, I think I've answered that with what personality-wise, and that's him.
Yes.
And that, let's let's just say he might be as respected, allegedly.
Nope.
There's a few around the traps, and that showed. But don't give him a chance. Know the laws of the game inside out.
Yep.
Give the ball to the umpire or leave it on the ground.
Amazing that it has actually been called a few times this season already. So
it's been four free kicks paid for it.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time. No. Yeah.
It's not a rule that we've seen just be pulled out of the rule book going, well, we're going to umpire that one more harshly this week, which we have seen in previous times as well. Interesting. The mid-season draft, mate, this sort of ties in with the SANFL a little bit. How many SANFL players do you expect to be taken, do you think? We're going to start with Nord because we obviously love the Redlegs, both of us here. Do we expect 2 or 3 of them to head over?
Be 2. My understanding, it's maximum of 2. Now, there's 2 aspects of this. Now, in terms of Logan Evans is technically still a Nord player, but he's played for Port this year. So
right.
I'm saying, because the word is that Port are going to pick him tonight.
Right.
And add him. He should be one of the Nord selections. Now, the word is no, he doesn't count that way, which to my mind is just bizarre.
That is bizarre.
It reads, it's ridiculous. I believe Matty Ling will get picked up tonight.
Yep.
There's been lots of clubs have shown interest, so I'll be very surprised if he doesn't get picked up.
And what were your thoughts on Harry Boyd pulling out and saying, look, he don't want to do it?
No, he didn't nominate, nor did the Herds. Billy Cootie is the other one.
Yes.
Whether things fall, he'll either be a Crow, a Lion, or hopefully, selfishly, still a Redleg at about 8 o'clock tonight.
All right, well, fingers crossed for that one, and we'll obviously be keeping it up to date. And
I think there'll be
report
5
back next
to
week
7 picked tonight. I think there'll be 2 from Nord, at least 2 in that regards.
Yep.
So we've just got to wait and see whether Murray lasts through to the Crows' first selection at 7.
Yes.
Jez McClellan is the other most likely selection of players from the SANFL.
Yep, and he had a very good state game, which we'll talk about.
Well, he's won the Foss Williams medal in both games.
Yep.
Both state games this year, so I'll be very surprised if Jez isn't back on an AFL list in another hour and a half.
Yes.
Howes from South Adelaide is a chance. Beacon from Woodville West Torrens is probably the next most likely after Ling.
Yes.
And McClellan. So
there's a fair few that could
Holder
disrupt.
is a look, there's a few SANFL clubs, I'll give you the big tip,
Yep.
are very, very nervous at the moment.
Yep. Let's just say hypothetically 2 or 3 do go from Nord. Where does that leave the Redlegs as far as their reserves are playing quite well? They've probably got a couple to cover, but it's hard finding class, isn't it?
Oh, it'll be massive. Losing Matty Ling will be huge, but it's the way it is. You can't do anything about it.
They've got aspirations to play at a high level, which is great.
Also for the player, it's a massive job promotion. It's a huge promotion financially too.
Yep.
Let's not muck around. I've got no problem with the players whatsoever.
Yep.
It's good luck to them.
Just the process.
Yeah. And I did say to Matty straight after the game on Saturday, all the best Wednesday night, but not too much luck.
Yep.
We just laughed together about it.
Yep. Don't fall over and trip over anything. I totally agree.
Well, I might have kicked him. Said you've got to miss a couple.
A little bit in the shin. Yeah. Fair call. State of Origin back on the agenda. Passionate plea from Gary Lyon. Should it return? I know we talked about it briefly before, but it seems like there's a want for it, a little bit more of a want for it.
I still don't think it will. Just the clubs are against it. The players are their assets. They don't want to risk an injury in it. There's no Australian selection at the end of it. Yeah, I doubt it.
Is it a case of getting a bit jealous with the NRL a little bit and how this 3-game series is going to play out? Once again, it's going to be
It's huge for rugby. It's not for us. You don't play any... it's not... Yeah, look, some of the players want it, some don't. I just don't think you're going to get support from the clubs.
Yep. I sort of like the idea of a little bit of that. I know we shouldn't be going to American, but I do like the idea of an American-style all-star game where the fans actually get to select the players, involve them in what's going on. That's just...
Yeah, but there's nothing at the end of it.
I know, but it's more of an exhibition type game anyway. But
that doesn't wet my boat.
No, but you do
like
want
2020 cricket for mine.
Okay, yeah, fair call.
Personally.
But at the same time, you do want to see the best going against the best. I know they're not going at 100%, but it still would be all right. But anyway, we'll move on. This week's Rising Star nomination was Harvey Harrison from Collingwood.
Yeah, he was very good Friday night.
He was very, very good, and he's getting his opportunity with Collingwood having a few injuries as well, and definitely putting his best foot forward.
And congratulations to Will Parker debuting. Let's remember that he played Big Bash earlier on. He's the most recent person now, obviously, to have played Sheffield Shield cricket and AFL footy.
Yep.
So all the best there to Will Parker as well.
Yeah, fair call. All right, we'll stick with a couple of hot topics here with the AFL. We'll whiz through these ones really, really quickly. National Reserves competition clubs are now frustrated that nothing seems to be getting done.
Yeah, my mail is it's still a while away yet. I don't think it'll be next year. So.
Is it partly because of the WA teams not 100% sure about how the travel arrangements and bits and pieces is going to play out?
Possibly, but yeah, I just don't. I still think it's a while away.
Fair call.
They've got to work out financially. There's so many other things. How many players on the list? How many top ups? How's that going to work? Like, I'm sorry. So you've got Crows and Port. They go to the AFL bit. Well, they're going to have 60 players, therefore, on their list, or what? How's it going to work? So those top up players, they're going to have to be virtually full time by the clubs. Because they're not going to be able to get a job that they've got to fly over on a Thursday to play a game in Melbourne.
Yes.
There's a hell of a lot of things to decide yet.
Yeah. Is it a case of that the academies need to be sorted out first before the reserves competition?
There's a lot of things to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that AFL House have got on their table that they don't seem to be doing a whole lot with, which then circles back to getting phone calls basically ignored as the week goes on from clubs. Can Paddy Cripps win another Brownlow upon his form this year?
I still think Heaney and Warner might be. I think Heaney. Let's remember.
It's a gun.
He may have got the maximum 15 votes in the first 5 rounds. So look, you're only going to get 25 to 30 to win it. He's still my favourite at this stage. Now the teams have just come through.
Yes.
So for Port Adelaide.
I was going to say, do you want to hold that one until we get to Port Adelaide? But no, let you go.
Oh, Dixon, Soldo, Francis Evans, Willie Rioli out, Jordan Sweet omitted, and Connor Rosie out injured. Carlton unchanged.
Very interesting. We'll talk about that one a little bit more when we get to the teams in a minute, but very interesting that they're going with a bit of tall timber considering it's going to be wet. Expect some changes. But anyway, Paddy Cripps, I'm in the same boat. I think he's going to win another Brownlow, but I don't think it's this year with Heaney being on top of his game at the moment. But there is a long way to go in the season. We did talk about Adelaide and Hawthorn being the blue-collar teams at the moment. Has Sam Mitchell got the most out of this group? Will Day fast becoming a number one player at Hawthorn to watch?
Oh, he's a gun.
And Adelaide are going to have to really, really watch him this weekend, aren't they?
He's a beautiful mover. Yeah, look, I think Newcomb and around the ball, they're hard at it.
Yep.
Work hard. Meek in doubt, I think, is pretty important for Hawthorn.
Yes.
A ruckman I would love Adelaide to have got.
Yes.
So, let's wait and see. But I just think that's a toss of the coin job. And who knows on the weather? Maybe we might actually see some weather footy this week. So. Yeah.
Be interesting to see. AFL draws becoming more frequent. Should the draw remain as part of the game? It is unique, isn't it?
Yeah, for mine it's a result. You can tinker this bit of saying, I laugh where people said, make it next score wins. Well, hang on. If you've got a 7-8 goal breeze, how much is the advantage of that?
Yep.
5-10 minutes. Now, therefore, if one team's managed to get a draw with 4 injuries on the bench, with no one rotations, how much is that as a disadvantage compared to a team with no injuries? So, I still think a draw is a legitimate result.
Fair call. Port Adelaide, are leading the competition with scores from kick-in. Top score of 35.3%.
It's huge percentage.
That is a massive percentage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next best team was around about 29%, and Adelaide sitting 6th with 24.8% from their kick-in. I think if you're scoring from one end to the other frequently as much as Port Adelaide are doing, basically a third of the time there. That goes a huge way to winning. But teams can shut that down very, very quickly, and then that leaves them a bit vulnerable, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if weather footy comes in, that probably changes that stat up a bit as well.
Absolutely. Will we ever see a 100-goal season again? And if so, who is most likely to do it?
I don't think we'll see it again.
Hard to see at the moment.
You can't see it at the moment.
Okay. Rule changes to help the game get better. We've had the 6-6-6. We've obviously had the standing rule. We did touch on this a little while ago. Last touch out of bounds, which is obviously being used in the SANFL, seems to keep the ball moving and back towards the centre. But also potentially 4 players in each arc could open that up a little bit more.
Yeah, it was fascinating watching on Sunday the 18s National Carnival with that rules in place, and all of a sudden the free kick's paid and you're not watching for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the density rule. And then you see a guy who's tried to run back and hasn't got back.
Yep.
So it does change footy up. It makes it more, certainly more attacking for the forwards, for a Mackay-Curnow combination sort of thing.
Well, that circles back to my previous question about a 100-goal kicker. If there is someone deep in that forward line or the 4 players that have got to remain almost in that forward 50, could we see a 100-goal kicker?
Yeah, possibly. And also I agree with, I better not name him because where there might be a particular person reasonably high up in footy who said in terms of the anti-density rule, either have it all together or don't have it in the 18s. He said you're trying to assess 18s players with almost a different game.
Yep.
So,
which circles back to what I talked about, I think, a fortnight ago before I went on a little bit of a break there and going that I hate how that we've got different rules at the SANFL level, different rules at the under-18 carnival, the anti-density rule, the last touch out of it. Yeah. When the game was exactly the same for the local Div 12s to the AFL, all right, there was some problems, but if you're going to change one thing at the top, surely that's got to filter its way down all the way.
And look, the thing in favour of the last touch rule at AFL level, remember, you're not playing on the smaller ground so much. So it's in that way. And at the moment, there was one last week where it was all of a sudden pay. There was one where a guy socketed it out of midair and it got pinged. Well, that's crap as a decision the way it is at the moment.
That's right. But but if you had that rule,
then it's just there and it's just
everyone knows.
Flying. Yeah.
Very, very good. Last one, the NRL played the State of Origin tri-series against each other in the NRLW. Could we see the the AFLW being part of the gather round next year?
I think it's a distinct possibility. Yeah.
I mean, we showcased the SANFL v the VFL or the State of Origin in the local leagues. Why didn't we have a representative side from the AFLW? I don't quite understand that.
Yeah. Well, it's not AFLW season again yet.
Well,
it would have had to been. You can't say suddenly pluck them out when they're not training flat out.
Yep.
It would have had to have been
SANFL
versus the SANFLW versus the VFLW.
But then that leads us back to the AFLW being in the right part of the season to allow that to happen, because if they started a couple of months earlier, by the time they get to gather round, they're pretty much all in the middle of their season, almost finishing their season.
As I said, you know my thoughts.
I do, and that's why I put it on the agenda, because I knew that you were... I
still can't work out why they did that.
Yep. All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, the SANFL, SANFLW, the cricket. We've parked the past players, past legends tonight, because we've obviously got a lot to talk about to catch up for the last couple of weeks. But we'll get back onto it as soon as possible.
Yep.
I'm Stephen Rowe, and you're listening to the Game On podcast.
Very topical that we've got Rowie there just before we talk the SANFL state game. SA once again very victorious over WA.
It's the class above WA. I actually think on that one, because it's been so many in a row, I think that's actually probably a reasonable indication where the competition's at. The SANFL is a fair way in front of Waffle. So, yeah.
Once again, McQuillan winning Foss Williams medal back-to-back. Very unusual playing two state games within a short period of time, but that's what it used to be like back in the day.
Yeah. Oh, look, I admit I was more than bemused on Jack Hurd not playing.
Mm-hmm.
It was bizarre. But McClellan's done the job again. Yeah, all the best to him.
Yep. And we'll
very shortly.
Yep, very, very shortly. All right, let's talk round 7 game. Actually, before we move on to that, we better do our tips for this week. Port v Carlton.
I'll go for Port.
Port. Collingwood v the Bulldogs.
I'm going to go the Bulldogs. I just think Collingwood just got too many injuries.
Ravaged, I think so as well. Hawthorn v Adelaide.
I'll go Hawthorn.
The Eagles v St Kilda.
I'll go Eagles.
I'll go the Eagles as well. Geelong v Richmond.
I'll go Geelong. Although Geelong, couple of suspensions as well.
Yeah, but
I'll go Geelong.
Down at home, down at GMHBA. I don't know how many times Richmond have travelled down there in the last few years. It'll be interesting to hear that.
They might get lost.
They could. Melbourne v the Dockers.
In Darwin.
It is in Darwin, TIO Traeger Park in Alice Springs.
I'll go the D's, but not with any real confidence.
It's a line ball for me, but I'm going to go Melbourne as well. The Suns v Essendon.
At the Gold Coast, and because they've been so good in general, probably more impressive in Darwin, actually, ironically.
Yes.
I'm going to go the Suns to rebound up there.
Essendon are an enigma for me because I think at the moment they're one of those teams a bit like Geelong that have sort of hit their purple patch a little bit, but I reckon they're going to get stung by GWS as well. It's going to be interesting. Buys to the Lions, North Melbourne, Sydney and the Giants. Looks like North Melbourne might actually have a reasonably good week this week.
Yeah, they might be shotgunning it.
All right.
It's not.
Let's talk. Let's move back to the SANFL. Let's talk round 7 matches after the state game the week before. West Adelaide with a bit of a surprise over North Adelaide.
Yeah, look, to Westie's credit, they've probably managed to get games in close and fight, make them a contest, and managed North just couldn't get them on the outside and well under the Bloods.
Absolutely. Norwood 11-goal third quarter against Central Districts, which was a bit out of the blue, wasn't it? Because Nord have struggled to score freely throughout the year, and all of a sudden they just put it together in one impressive quarter.
It was a quarter, though, where just whatever the ball bounced, it bounced the right way. A couple of times, Nord players had run ahead of the ball. I actually think they got involved in it, and yet somehow it then came off. And, it was a bizarre quarter of footy.
Yep.
It was very enjoyable to watch.
Absolutely. And Young Herd kicking one after the siren there to make it a nice even 11.
Yeah, 11-5 to a point, I think it was. Yeah, it was weird. And then the last quarter was,
weirder again.
Yeah, maybe Nord put, I think it was interesting speaking to a couple of the players after the game where they said, you're tired. I said, well, you don't get, the ball goes out of bounds at Nord or stops and there's a contest and a ball up, you stop. Game keeps moving more on the bigger ground, so it's a little bit different, and that's the first time for the year they've been exposed to that.
Yep.
So it was probably just a bit different in terms of on their running capacity. And it was reasonably warm still,
And Nord have generally struggled out at the Ponderosa for many, many years, so it was an impressive result. I still rate Central Districts quite highly, but Nord just sort of one very, very good quarter and completely blowing it out
Harry
of the water.
Grant injured for Central's change, and their ruckman's still injured. Their ruckman being out for the year for the Dogs is pretty big. So
we did talk briefly earlier on that South Adelaide absolutely taking Port Adelaide to the cleaners in the end.
Yeah, look, well done by the Panthers and Grant Miles, etc.
A good morale boosting for them for a little bit of the hard work, because they have been belted from pillar to post early in the season.
So hopefully they nearly got up against the Eagles a couple of weeks ago at home at Woodville. Yes. So probably a little bit of steady improvement. So all the best there, the Panthers. But Port, that's pretty.
It's very unport-like, and I just think that it's almost a little bit of an up you to the SANFL, and we just want out. We want out of here, and we're just doing what we're doing.
I still can't work out why they think they're going to be so much better off. That's my bit.
Yep.
They think they're being crucified with selections, and that. I think that's a bit of bullshit.
I think it's more about the academies.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sturt doing a little bit of a number on Adelaide. Sturt again, Marty Matner's...
Yeah, Tom Lewis back. He's crucial. He's a class on baller. So Lewis, Snelling and Battersby together is very strong and, three very, very good players.
Yep.
So that strengthened them.
And being back home at Unley Oval, which is obviously, the heartland.
So,
and that would have been dirty losing to Glenelg just before the state game there back at Unley Oval. So, Woodville West Torrens would have been a little bit dirty losing to them. So they came out and made a statement, didn't they?
Yeah. So probably again the margin was a bit disappointing that Adelaide weren't a bit more competitive than that. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
It is what it is.
Yep.
And the game of the round was Woodville West Torrens v Glenelg in the end.
Yeah, Glenelg just got away to a fast start. I got there after that because coming from the 18s game.
Yes.
Got there probably halfway through the second quarter and they were 4 or so up at that stage and they basically really stayed.
Yes.
They got back within a couple, but Glenelg and Hosey bat was important.
Huge, isn't it? Yep.
He's a good SANFL player.
Yep.
He was very unlucky. Picked up in the mid-season draft and still didn't really get an opportunity either. So I still think Glenelg.
They're building.
Yeah, they are. They're going to be around the
Yeah. All right, let's move on to round. Round 8 of the SANFL men's season. Port Adelaide v Sturt Friday night at Alberton Oval.
Geez, I'll be packed in there. Sturt.
Very cool. We've got one of the top 4 sides. We've actually got all of the top 4 sides playing each other. Yeah. But Glenelg taking on Central Districts at Stratorama Stadium down at Glenelg.
Yeah, I'll go for Glenelg.
I will go for Glenelg as well. This becomes really interesting. The Bloods, West Adelaide v Adelaide.
Yeah, I'll go the Bloods.
It's a tight one.
Yeah, Adelaide have got to remember they'll take another player
That's
to Melbourne
why I'll
and
pick
all that.
West Adelaide as well.
Yeah.
North Adelaide v the Panthers. This becomes a bit of a must-watch game almost.
At prospect, I'll go the Roosters still.
I'm going to go the Roosters as well. I had to think on that one there. And Nord v the Eagles, probably game of the round.
Yeah, triple header on Sunday. So, reserve starting at 9:30.
Yes.
So, I'll be at Nord at about 9.
Yes. I'm surprised you're not sleeping there Saturday night, mate.
Yeah, so,
if the missus would let you.
Yeah. So, big day. I'll go for Nord. I'll go Nord because it's at home, but yeah.
I'll go for Nord, but I want to see who gets picked up in the mid-season draft before I'm sort of confident or comfortable with it.
Agreed.
Looking at the ladder after 7 games, Nord are the only undefeated team. Woodville, West Torrens, Glenelg, Centrals and Sturt. West Adelaide just sitting outside the top 5 at the moment. Really, the top 4 at the moment look all right, and you can't count out Sturt either because we all know what Marty Matner can do, and I think they're building quite nicely as well. So anything can happen from here. All right, let's quickly move on to the SANFLW. Results in round 11, a 1-point win to the Panthers over the Bloods.
Yeah, and the ball was in West Adelaide's forward line for about the last 5 minutes, but the Panthers fought and hung on. So,
absolutely. North Adelaide getting up over the Tigers, a big upset.
Yeah, so North change of coach and that the old coach leaving.
It always happens, doesn't it? They get a bit of a spike.
So, yeah, big result though. So it's thrown a bit of a. I still think Glenelg are going to finish 1 or 2.
Yep.
So yeah, good wake up call for the Tigers as well.
Often happens. Sturt too strong for the Eagles.
Yep.
And Norwood getting up over last year's premiers, the Bulldogs.
Yeah, in a game which seesawed a little bit. The Dogs were 0-6 in the first quarter.
Yep.
Redbacks would love to be none for 6. I'll still use that line, even though we're no longer the Redbacks.
They'd love to be none for 100, but we won't go there.
That then helped in that way, and then Nord kicked a couple of goals in the last quarter to get up. So yeah,
and Nord obviously drawing with Glenelg there a couple of weeks ago. So they're not too bad at the moment, taking on a couple of very, very good sides. We'll talk about this week's matches: Sturt v the West Adelaide Bloods.
Yeah, I'll go Sturt.
It's at Unley Oval, so I'm going to go Sturt as well. The Tigers v the Bulldogs. This one for me, a lot of interest.
Yeah, I'll go Glenelg to rebound. That's a real big game.
Absolutely. The Panthers v North Adelaide at Prospect.
Yeah, I'll still go for South.
I'm going to go for South as well. And Nord v the Eagles.
Yeah, I'll be doing it on the scoreboard. I'll go the Legs.
All right, if anybody's there, please come say hello to the great man sitting up on the scoreboard.
Say hello there.
After
books with me.
Absolutely. After 11 games, Glenelg sitting top, South Adelaide, Centrals and Nord. With that draw a couple of weeks ago there, that does put Nord 3 games inside the top, 3 points inside the top 4. So a little bit of a buffer between them and West Adelaide just sitting outside the 4.
All right. Westie's losing by a point and then Nord getting up. Yeah.
Sort of changed the dynamic a little bit, didn't it?
Big time.
All right, let me take a quick breath there. All right, let's move on to cricket. IPL champions were crowned. A couple of Australians involved there.
Mitch Stark delivered again in a final.
A couple of zinging balls, though.
I tell you what, while I'm not a 2020 fan, that is absolutely unplayable. I don't care. Bradman wouldn't have hit that. That's the only way you can say it. It was unreal. So
that's one for the highlight reel that is definitely going to be played over and over again. A bit like Warnie's to Gadding over in England there. Just bamboozled. Yeah. It was an absolute jaffa, wasn't it?
And Travis getting out for a duck probably there. And so it was actually a disappointing final because it was so one-sided.
Yeah, absolutely. T20 warm-up games against Namibia and West Indies. Surely to start favourite for the World Cup. I know that there are a couple of warm-up games. Do they trial a couple of players? I did note a couple of weeks ago they brought in a couple of extras.
They've already played Namibia. Mate, this morning, there weren't enough players there. So Bailey fielded, Brad Hodge fielded, and McDonald.
Right, so support staff are basically...
Mickey Mouse game.
Yep.
Waste of time.
Yep. What are your thoughts on matches being played in the US? Is it good for the promotion of the game of cricket?
Look, it is. I'd like to see what the grounds are like. I haven't seen any of the grounds yet. So, it's... You'd want it to be successful and want to get America more involved in the future because otherwise it's been pointless. So, hopefully it works. And look, on the size of their population, you want America involved. So
a bit like China, you want involved in something somewhere along the line. I mean, look how they're going at tennis and golf. I mean, they're almost dominating, or starting to dominate. So, all right, let's take a very, very quick break. Once again, mate, we're going to park the past players, past legends for this week. We're going to get straight on to Happy Days.
Yep.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy Days.
All right, let's start with Happy Days. Happy birthday to Lockie Neal, born 24th of May, 1993. Neal was drafted to the Fremantle Dockers with their 4th selection, number 58 overall in the 2011 draft. Again, another good player coming from that deep draft list of around the 50s, a bit like Rory Sloane, which we've talked about previously.
No, he's a mammoth success. 2 Brownlows, unbelievable. And incredibly from South Australia and to go from Freo to Brisbane,
Absolutely. Co-captain of Brisbane Lions at the moment. He previously played for Fremantle, as we mentioned, between 2012 and 2018, before being traded to Brisbane in 2019, where he won both Brownlow medals in 2020 and 2023. That's an impressive effort. And also, we forget that he is South Australian as well. He played his junior football out in the country there, and then obviously recruited down to Glenelg in the SANFL, including 7 games for the league side before returning to the under-18 team for the grand final. Despite Glenelg losing to Port Adelaide, he gathered 40 possessions and was awarded the Alan Stewart Medal for the best player in the game. He represented South Australia in the 2011 AFL Under-18 Championships. 3-time All-Australian team amongst the huge list of achievements that he's played across 2 clubs. How do we see him finishing out his career at Brisbane, if he stays at Brisbane?
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah, I think he will too. Absolute legend of a player. All right, let's move on to cricket. 1938. We're going back a fair way here, but I had to add this one here. Cricking batting genius Don Bradman scores 145 not out for Australia versus Hampshire in Southampton, completing 1,000 runs before the end of May.
Before the end of May, yeah.
It's the second for the second time. He is the only touring batsman to England to have ever performed that feat. That's a pretty impressive statistic. I had to put it in because it's something I'd never heard of.
Yeah, no, as a cricket nut,
yes.
I did know that and that sort of thing. But, yeah, it's just ridiculous yet again, Bradman.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bradman won everyone else.
It's a long way behind. All right, we move on to basketball in 2015. The Golden State Warriors win the NBA Western Conference. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to the extra time big finish. In tennis, 1984. Now, this one's a good one. Manuela Maleva of Bulgaria wins 3 singles tennis matches in the one day.
Wow.
1984. The Italian Open 1984 beats...
it's not Manuel from Fawlty Towers.
No, it's not. Beats, I believe, a local in Rizzoni. Carling Bassett and Chris Evert is probably the big one there in the final of 6-3, 6-3. Only the 7th player to beat Chris Evert on clay, but 3 games in a day.
Well done, Manuel.
Absolutely.
He was always a gun.
She was always a gun. All right, we move on. Last one today, motorsport, Indianapolis 500. A great two-man dual race in history. Winner Jim Rathman and Roger Ward battle it out. Then record 29 lead changes with Ward eventually becoming the victor. Getting in trouble, slows down and getting in trouble and handing the win to Rathman.
29 lead changes. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, you think, especially with the Indy 500, it's a tight circuit. Yeah. To be changing 29 times is unbelievable.
And probably the other big thing, though, in terms of, is Rafael Nadal getting bowing out in the French Open.
We'll talk about that one in the extra time big finish.
Yeah.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, thanks for bearing with us. We're just having a little bit of a play with the video live stream tonight, but I reckon we've got it all going now. Tennis, just as you mentioned there, the French Open begins and some pretty good results, but as you said, Rafael Nadal bows out in the first round of the French Open, and I think he's pretty much resigned to the fact that tennis is now just going to be a little bit too hard.
And I think that's it.
Yeah, and I think this is the French Open and the Olympics was probably the 2 big ones that he wanted to get back for. And, great player. All right, Australians in action. Just got some results that have come through, obviously, last night. Alex de Minaur getting up in straight sets, only dropping 3 games. Very impressive once again.
Yeah.
Again, Alex can build into a very, very good tournament. I probably fancy him a little bit more on grass, but let's see how his clay court season goes. We have a couple of Australians playing against each other in Kokonakis and Popperin. That went 5 sets right down to the wire, with Kokonakis getting up there. Rinky Hitchcarter going down, and also Adam Walton, who was a wild card, going down there as well. So very, very interesting there. And then obviously some interesting results as far as the women's go, but we'll cover them a little bit more next week. All right, let's move on to the NBA. We've got what seems to be the forever finals going on, the conference finals. The Boston Celtics were the first team through to the championship decider after winning their conference semi-final against the Pacers, 4-0. But at the moment, we're waiting on an opponent between the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. At the moment, the Mavericks leading that series 3-1. Apologies there, 3-1. And hopefully by this time next week, we're into the finals, the 7-game series there, and exciting times ahead there.
Go Top Gun.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the NRL very, very quickly. We'll just run through the ladder at this stage. We might cover them a little bit more in depth next week. Sharks sitting top of the table, the Panthers and the Storm, Dolphins, Roosters, Broncos, Knights, Raiders, and the Sea Eagles just sitting outside the top 8. I worry for the Rabbitohs at the moment. They're probably the team that I follow the most there, currently sitting bottom with only 2 wins so far. All right, let's move on to the soccer. Congratulations to the Central Coast Mariners on winning basically winning everything in the 2023-2024 season.
And to come from behind, 1-1 just in right late in normal time and then win 3-1 in extra time. So congratulations.
Absolutely. And it was great to see the crowd coming onto the ground and getting involved. Nothing silly happened.
Yeah.
They just wanted to enjoy their team's victory. The A-League's copped a bit over the last couple of weeks with everything that's happened with the betting scandals and what's going on and why are so many clubs losing money and why isn't it being filtered through to lower levels. I think we've got to get Mary back on to have a little bit of a chat about what is actually going on, because from the outside it looks like a bit of a mess, that's for sure. But have Central Coast sort of set the template of playing a lot of their youngsters and their youth and their local players rather than concentrating a little bit too much on international players?
I think so. And look, Adelaide tried that, but fell away with consistency. There was some highs and lows with Adelaide United this year. Seemed like the length of the season affected Adelaide.
Yeah.
So,
Now they've let go of a few players heading into next year. It's going to be obviously a big time for recruiting. Let's see what they come up with. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch. But one recruit that they do have, and that is a coach or a director of coaching, technical director. That's the official term. PSV Icon technical director, Ernest Faber. He's called Mr. PSV.
Yeah, well, you can't say they haven't. He's got a fair reputation.
He's got a very good reputation.
Let's see, and good luck to
Irukunda,
who's going to debut for the Socceroos against Palestine and Bangladesh coming up. So, congratulations there.
Well deserved as well. I think also looking towards the future a little bit. They've got to start playing him a little bit there as well. All right, we'll finish off with a couple here. Baseball, Australian and Adelaide-born player Jack O'Loughlin makes his MLB debut for the Oakland A's, and from all accounts, held his own.
Great news and all the best,
He's the 38th Australian to do so and the 5th from SA. That's actually pretty good numbers from SA providing to the MLB. When you think about it, little old Adelaide.
It's not bad.
The last couple of years we've obviously been blessed with a couple of championship teams, but the development that is going on there seems to be working very, very nicely. All right, mate, a couple of general questions to finish us off tonight. Would you pay money to have lunch with a couple of footballing superstars?
Personally, no, but then it depends on your love of the game and whether they're one of your all-time heroes. So,
well, one of them is Harley Reid.
Yeah, it's personally.
And the other one is Nick Nat. So the two of them sitting at a table, intergenerational.
Yeah, personally, I'd rather. Yeah, it's a no from me, but each to their own.
It is what it is. Do you think friendly games from Premier League clubs is a good way to promote the game in Australia? I know they had 78,000 to the MCG.
Well, purely on the crowd-wise, it's hard to argue. Yeah.
But what did it cost us to have them here?
It'd be interesting.
And what's we talked about the flow-on effect from the Matildas. What's the flow-on effect from having a couple of Premier League teams, not really at full strength, but a couple of Premier League teams coming down here to Australia?
Well, pretty incredible that they've basically just finished their season. Normally, you'd think once you finish your season, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's interesting.
Well, it's a bit like the AFL used to go over to England and play a couple of games until the bloodbath between, was it Carlton and Collingwood, I believe, and then that all sort of changed. So, very interesting.
North Melbourne it was.
That's right. Just to finish us off, do we see Daniel Riccardo securing a contract for next year? It's hard to say at the moment.
Yeah. No, park the bus on that one.
And then
50-50.
Moving across to Oscar Piastri, obviously finishing second in the Monaco Grand Prix. A bit of a feather in his cap as well.
No, that's a tick. Yep.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we've got through a huge...
We've caught up. Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you very much. We've got through a huge episode tonight. We might do a quick good, the bad, the ugly for you.
I'll go the bad and the ugly, the same thing, that decision in poor umpiring and poor by Collingwood.
Yep, and you good?
Not so much good. I love the respect when Rafa lost and the way he bowed out leaving.
Yes.
It had a touch of class.
Yep, and we've talked about Federer and Nadal having a touch of class as it is, so I agree with you. My good for the week has probably been the AFL's decision to seriously have a look at the interpretation for holding the ball. I think that it can only be good for the game if we're looking at it. And we might get a bit of an overcorrection, but let's see how it pans out in 3 or 4 weeks' time. And if we're all jumping up and down, well, then we know we've got a pretty serious problem. My bad and my ugly is probably West Coast and North Melbourne at the moment. Just not quite there, and I don't know how they're going to get themselves out of the hole that they're in. And like you, my bad and my ugly is probably that umpiring decision that was quite late in the game. It was crazy. All right, mate, as per usual, thank you for joining us once again. Thank our listeners, and on this occasion, thank our video viewers. We'll try and get this one up tomorrow as well with our podcast going out as per usual. But as we like to do every time, thank you, and we promise to do better next time.
I'm very nervous as the mid-season draft starts in 3 minutes.
Mate, I will leave that in your capable hands.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.